Hello everyone, we are the Group 2 and our topic is about selection of stocks and stocking practices. It is an important concept in aquaculture because the success of fish production begins with choosing the right species and stocking them properly. Selection of stocks refers to choosing healthy, fast-growing, and environment-adapted fish, while stocking practices refers to how these fish are introduced into the culture system, including density, timing, and acclimatization. Now here are the factors to consider in choosing fish for aquaculture: growth performance, reproductive habits, egg and larvae requirements, nutritional needs and feeding habits, polyculture possibilities, adaptability to crowding, disease resistant, and market demand. First factor is a growth performance. This refers to how efficiently and how fast a fish converts feed into body weight. This is very important because the fast-growing fish reduce production time, lower feeding costs, and allow farmers to harvest sooner, leading to quicker profit. First, fish should have a high growth rate. This means that they should gain weight quickly over a short period. Next, the fish should be able to reach marketable size in a short time. When fish grow faster, farmers can harvest earlier and start a new production cycle sooner. Also, the fish should reach market size before its first maturation. This is very important because once a fish matures sexually, they begin to use their size for reproduction rather than growth. Now looking at the figure on the right side, it compares slow-growing and fast-growing fish. The graph shows that fast-growing fish reach higher body weight and length within the same period of time. This illustrates why selecting fast-growing strains is very beneficial in aquaculture. They reach harvest size sooner and improve production efficiency. Next, we consider another important factor in selecting species for aquaculture, which is reproductive habits. Reproductive habits refer to how well a species can reproduce under culture conditions and how easily farmers can obtain a continuous supply of seed, such as fry or fingerlings. First, the species must have the ability to reproduce. This means that it should be capable of spawning naturally in captivity or through controlled breeding techniques. Second, there must be a stable supply of seed. Continuous production of juveniles ensure that farmers can restock regularly and maintain production cycles without delay. Third, the reproductive process and genetic selection must be understood. Farmers and hatchery technicians need to know the breeding season, spawning behavior, and environmental triggers such as temperature or salinity. Understanding genetics also allows selection of improved strains that grow faster or resist disease. Fourth, reproduction should produce large quantities of offspring and occur frequently. Species with high fecundity and frequent spawning provide more fry, which increases the chances of successful stocking and reduces the cost of juvenile. Finally, eggs and larvae should be large, hardy, and easy to culture. Now, as we can see, at the right part, it shows healthy fish, eggs, and larvae. These eggs appear clear, well-formed, and uniform, which indicates good fertilization and viability. This illustrates the goal of hatchery management, to produce strong, healthy offspring that will survive and grow efficiently once stocked in ponds or cages. After reproductive ability, the next factor in selecting an aquaculture species is its nutritional needs and feeding habits. Fish differ in their position in the food chain. Some species feed high on the food chain and require expensive protein-rich diets, while others feed low on the food chain and can utilize natural pond productivity. Species that feed low on the food chain are often preferred in aquaculture because they consume algae, plankton, or plant material. This reduces feed costs and make production more sustainable. In short, the easier and cheaper a species is to feed, the more profitable and practical it is for culture. As you can see in this image, algae and plankton, which are natural food sources for larvae, so their presence improves survival, and reduces feed costs. Like land animals, aquatic animals require protein, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and minerals for growth and survival. However, unlike terrestrial animals, some of these nutrients are naturally available in water through plankton, algae, and other organisms. Because of this, understanding the exact nutritional requirements of each species is essential. The better we understand their diet, the more efficiently we can grow them and reduce feed waste and production costs. Finally, species that can readily accept artificial or formulated feeds are preferred because this allows farmers to control nutrition, improve growth, and maintain consistent production. Another factor to consider in species selection is the use of polyculture, which depends on the production system being used. In intensive systems such as trout or catfish farming, the farmer often prioritizes rapid growth and high feed efficiency rather than maximizing space use. In these cases, monoculture may be preferred for easier management. However, polyculture can significantly increase total production by combining species that live in different parts of the water and consume different types of food. Farmers can use space and natural resources more efficiently. In short, polyculture improves productivity by reducing competition and making full use of the pond environment. So as you can see in the picture, this shows species sharing the same environment without competing, but instead it demonstrates efficient resource use. Aquaculture systems often stock large numbers of fish in limited space, so the species must tolerate close stocking without excessive stress or mortality. While crowding can increase productivity and maximize the use of space, it also requires better management of water quality, feeding, and disease control. Therefore, species chosen for culture should be able to withstand crowded conditions while still maintaining good growth and survival. So this picture shows cage culture where fish are stocked closely and only species that tolerate stress and limited space perform well here. Another key factor in selecting aquaculture species is disease resistance. Different species vary in their natural ability to resist infections and environment stress. Choosing a disease-resistant species helps reduce mortality, treatment costs, and production losses. Aquaculturists therefore select species based on disease risks and environmental conditions present at their production site, such as water quality, temperature, and stocking density. In simple terms, the more disease-resistant the species, the more stable and sustainable the production will be. So the first image shows a well-managed system that supports fish health, while on the second image, this shows a damaged system where disease risk is high. Now, even if the production is efficient and successful, it becomes meaningless if there is no market to sell the product. Aquaculture should always be guided by consumer needs and economic values. A good market exists when consumers actually want the product, can afford its price, and prefer its tastes. It is also very important that the product can be prepared conveniently and stored or transported so it can reach buyers in good condition. So, in short, successful aquaculture is not only about growing fish, but it is also very important to focus on producing what people are willing and able to buy. Now let us proceed to stocking rate. But what is stocking rate? It refers to how many fish or how much fish biomass you place in a certain area or volume of water. It tells you whether your pond, tank, or cage is overcrowded or understocked. At this point, I will discuss the two main interpretations of stocking rate in aquaculture, which are essential for proper grow-out, management, and production planning. The first interpretation is based on the weight of fish, also known as the biomass-based stocking rate. This method is more useful for grow-out and production planning because it allows us to estimate the total biomass that the pond cage can support. Now, there are two ways to express this. First is the weight per unit area. For example, we can stack at 0.4 kilograms per square meter or 4,000 kilograms per hectare. This approach is typically used in pond aquaculture or in systems where the water surface area limits its growth. Next is the weight per unit volume. This is more common in cage culture or tanks, where the depth of water matters. For instance, we might stock at 90 kilograms per cubic meter in a small cage or 420 kilograms in a 6 cubic meter cage. This ensures that the fish have enough space to grow without overcrowding, and which could also lead to stress, reduced growth, and increased disease risk. The second interpretation is based on the number of fish, also called as density-based stocking rate. This method is commonly used when stocking fry, fingerlings, or juvenile fish where exact biomass may not be yet known. So it can be expressed in two ways also. First is the fish per unit area. For example, 5 fish per square meter or 50,000 fish per hectare. This helps aquaculturists plan the initial stocking in ponds. Next is the fish per unit volume. This is used for cages or tanks, for example, 20 fish per cubic meter in a cage or 5,000 fish in a 200 cubic meter cage. Using this method ensures that the fish have adequate space to swim and reduce mortality during the early growth stages. We are looking at Table 1, stocking rate per hectare in monoculture method. In aquaculture, a monoculture means we are raising only one species at a time in a pond. The stocking rate refers to the number of individuals, fish or shrimp, we put into 1 hectare area. As you can see from the table, this rate isn't random. It depends entirely on two things, the species being farmed and the level of production intensity. Let's look at the left-hand column first in the vertical axis. This describes the 4 levels of culture intensity, and the main difference between them is food and technology. First is the extensive, which is the most natural way. The fish rely mainly on natural food like loblab or lumot growing in the pond. Because the food is limited, we stock fewer fish. The modified extensive, it is a slight step up, perhaps with some fertilization to boost natural food growth. Next is semi-intensive. Here we start adding supplemental feeding because we are bringing in outside food. The pond can support a much higher population. Next is the intensive. This is a high-density farming. We use complete feeding like pellets and usually aeration system. Since we aren't relying on the pond's natural productivity at all, we can pack higher number of stocks. Now, on the horizontal axis, we can see the species and food sources. We are tracking 3 main species, the bangus or milkfish, sugpo or tiger prawn, and siganids. You'll also notice different food bases mentioned, like lablab, amat of algae, bacteria, and small animals, lumot, filamentous green algae, and plankton, microscopic organisms suspended in the water. So first, in the bangus, if we look at the bangus, we notice that how food source changes the capacity. With lablab, an extensive pond holds 2,000 to 3,000 fish, represented by T4,000. If we switch to plankton and go intensive, we can stock 15,000 or more. Interestingly, we notice that for bangus, with lumot, the table stops at modified expensive. This is because lumot is harder to maintain in high-density environments compared to plankton or pellets. Next is for the sugpo. The most striking column is the sugpo. Look at those numbers. Even at extensive level, we start at 10,000 to 20,000 per hectare. By the time we reach the intensive, we are looking at 60,000 to 200,000 prawns. Prawns are smaller than milkfish and can be stocked at much higher densities if the water quality and feed are strictly managed. Next is the siganids. If we pay attention to the footnotes at the semi-intensive level, we stop using lumot and switch to plankton. It is because the table tells us that it provides more physical space for the fish to swim, and since lumot can take up too much of the pond's volume. So we can say that as the intensity of the system increases, the stocking rate increases. However, higher stocking rates require more inputs, more feed, the better aeration, and more careful monitoring. While an intensive system yields more fish, an extensive system is much cheaper and more natural to run. Next, we move to Table 2, stocking rate per hectare in polyculture method. Unlike monoculture, polyculture involves growing 2 or more species together. This method is efficient because different species often occupy different levels of pond or eat different types of food. In this table, we focus on extensive and semi-intensive levels. You will notice that the intensive row is empty. This is because managing multiple species at extremely high densities with complete feeding is very complex and less common in polyculture systems. In the bangus and mud crab, in extensive, we stock 1,000 bangus and 500 mud crabs per hectare. In semi-intensive, with supplemental feeding, these numbers jump significantly to 9,000 bangus and 1,000 mud crabs. For sugpo and bangus, in extensive, the combination supports 10,000 to 20,000 sugpo along with 500 bangus. In semi-intensive, interestingly, while the bangus count increases to 4,000 to 6,000, the sugpo range actually decreases to 5,000 to 10,000 compared to the extensive range. This suggests a shift in how resources are balanced when supplemental feed is introduced. Next is the 3-species mix. The table also shows a complex mix for 3,000 grouper, 1,000 mud crab, and 1,000 saline tilapia. This is only listed under semi-intensive as these species require extra nutrients from supplemental feeding to thrive together. So, to conclude, polyculture allows farmers to diversify their harvest. By moving from extensive to semi-intensive, we can significantly increase the total biomass of the pond, provided that we add supplemental feeding to support the extra population. Table 3 shows stocking rates per square meter specifically for ponds using lablab as food. Notice how density decreases as the fish grow and move through different pond stages. In nursery pond, this is the highest density stage. We stock 30 to 50 bangus or 20 to 30 sugpo per square meter. On the transition pond, as they grow, the space is increased, reducing bangus to 10 to 15 per square meter. And in the rearing pond, in the final stage before harvest, density is lowest to allow for maximum growth. Bangus drops to just 0.15 to 0.3 and sugpo 1 to 2 per square meter. So we can say that the polyculture mixes species to fill different niches, and pond unit stocking proves that as animals get larger, they require significantly more individual space to reach market size. Now let's proceed to Table 4, Stocking Density Guidelines for Fish, Cages, Pens, and Ponds. Let's look at the fish cages first. Because cages are usually placed in open water with high flow, they support the highest densities. In bangus, we stock 25 to 40 fish per cubic meter, specifically at a fingerling size of 10 to 15 cm. In siganid, these allow for the highest density at 100 to 200 fish per cubic meter. For the grouper, being high value territorial fish, they are stocked more moderately at 30 to 50 fish per cubic meter. Moving to fish pens, which are larger enclosures in shallower water, the density drops significantly here to ensure enough oxygen. For bangus, we only stock 5 to 8 fish per cubic meter A critical requirement for both bangus and sigonids in pens is a water depth of at least 3 meters to prevent overcrowding and waste buildup at the bottom. Grouper in pens are stocked with sparsely at only 8 to 10 fish per cubic meter. Finally, for fish ponds, the table refers us to culture method. Ponds are generally lower density than cages because they rely on manual aeration and rather in natural currents. So in summary, cages offer high volume production in small spaces, while pens require more surface area and specific depth to maintain fish health.
Good day everyone! Today I will explain how to compute the total number of fish stocks needed for a pond. But before we start solving, it is important to understand why this calculation matters. Computing the correct fish stocking is very important in aquaculture because it helps maintain a healthy balance inside the ponds. If we stock too many fishes, the pond can become overcrowded. This leads to competition for food and oxygen, slower growth, higher stress, and increased risk of disease. On the other hand, if we stock too few fish, the pond space and resources are not fully utilized, which can reduce productivity and profit. By properly computing fish stocking, we ensure that the fish have enough space to grow properly, food and oxygen are used efficiently, stress and disease are minimized, growth and survival rates improve, and the production become more economical and sustainable. In short, correct stocking calculation helps farmers achieve better fish health, better yield, and better management of the pond. That is why learning how to compute fish stocking is an essential skill in aquaculture. First, let's understand the formula we are going to use. So in finding for total number of stock, the formula is number of stock is equal to area times stocking rate per unit area. This formula means that we multiply the size of the pond by how many fish are recommended per unit area. For example, if the standard rate of stocking is 20,000 per hectare, how many fish will be needed to stock in a 50 meter by 80 meter pond? In our example, we are given the stocking rate is 20,000 per hectare. The pond is a size of 50 meters by 80 meters. Our goal is to find how many fish are needed to stock this pond. So, there are three options in solving the number of stock, but first we have to know the option 1. So, for the option 1, first, we had to find the area. We need to multiply the length and the width. So, 50 meter by 80 meter is equal to 4,000 meters squared. So now, we know the pond area is 4,000 meters squared. Second is, we need to solve for the number of stock using the formula above. So, we need this conversion because the stocking rate is given in hectare. We know that the 1 hectare is equal to 10,000 square meters. So now, we multiply the pond area by stocking rate. So 4,000 meters squared times 20,000 fish is equal to, it is equal to 80 million fish. Divided by 10,000 meters squared. So the answer is 8,000 fish. So using the option 1, the pond requires 8,000 fish. Now, let's tackle the option 2. So same example lang. First, determine the area if such is unknown. So 50 meter times 80 meter is equal to 4,000 meters squared. Second is we need to convert stocking rate per hectare to stocking rate per meter squared. So we need to convert fish per hectare into fish per square meter. stocking rate per meter squared is equal to 20,000 fish per hectare. Kaya diba, the standard rate of stocking is 20,000 per hectare. Multiply to 1 hectare over 10,000 meters squared, because 10,000 meter is equivalent to 1 hectare. So we need to cancel the 1 hectare, and then 20,000 fish divided by 10,000 meters squared is equal to 2 fish per meter squared. And then for next is solve for the number of stocks needed. We already know the pond area is equal to 4,000 meters squared, multiplied by 2 fish per meter squared, which is 8,000 fish. Again, with the same result, it is also 8,000 fish. So for option 3, we can use the ratio and proportion formula. Given bigger area to given number of stock is equal to given smaller area to X or unknown stock, or given bigger area over given number of stock is equal to given smaller area over X or unknown stock. So with the same example, if the standard rate of stocking is 20,000 per hectare, how many fish will be needed to stock in a 50 meter by 80 meter pond? So for substitution, the given bigger area is 10,000 meters squared over the given number of stock, which is the 20,000 fish. It is equal to 4,000 meters squared for the smaller area over X or unknown stock. So we use the cross multiplication. 10,000 meters squared is equal to 4,000 meters squared times 20,000 fish. And then X, or the unknown stock, is equal to 80 million fish times meter squared over 10,000 meters squared. So, i-cancel ang meter squared. 80 million fish divided by 10,000 is equal to 8,000 fish. So, option 3 also confirms the answer, which is the 8,000 fish the pond need for proper stocking. Now, I will explain how to compute the principal or total number of stock, which means finding out how many fry we should buy before mortality happens. So, before solving, let's understand why it is important. In fish farming, not all fry survive during the nursery and transition stages. Some losses happens due to stress handling or environmental conditions. If farmers only buy the exact number needed for grow out, they may end up with too few fish. So by computing the principal or total number of stocks, farmers can prepare for expected mortality, maintain enough fish for production, avoid shortage in the growth out ponds, and improve planning and profitability. So this calculation helps ensures that even after losses, the farmer still has the right number of fish to continue the operations. So for example, your 4-hectare grow out or rearing ponds require 128,000 bangus fingerlings for the whole year round of culture operation, say 4 times in a year. If this above figure represents 70% of the total purchase, how many bangus fry then are you going to purchase to include allowance for 30% mortality to be incurred in the NP and TP before they could be raised instead rearing ponds? So the formula, principal or total number of stock, is equal to percentage survival of stocks divided by survival rate of stocks divided by 100. So in our example, the growth out ponds needs 128,000 bangus fingerlings. This number represents 70% survival, meaning 30% mortality is expected. Our goal is to find how many fry we should purchase at the start. So, first step, we need to convert the survival percentage, which is 70%, become 0.70. Second is apply the formula. The total fry needed, 128,000 bangus fingerlings fish divided by 0.70, it is equal to 182,857 bangus fry. So, to make sure we end up with 128 fingerlings, we must initially purchase 182,857 bangus fry. This includes allowance for expected mortality. Now, I will explain how to compute the percentage survival of stock. These tell us how many fish remain after rearing based on the survival rate. So before we solve, let's understand why this is important. In aquaculture, survival rate shows how effective the rearing process is. It helps the farmer evaluate if their nursery and transition pond management is working well. Knowing the survival percentage helps farmers monitor fish health and handling practices, measure the management efficiency, predict the future stocking needs, and reduce unexpected losses. So, this computation tells us how many fry successfully grow into fingerlings. In our example, what is the percentage survival number of stock if only 70% has been accounted for out of the total purchase of 182,857 bangus fry after they have been reared in the NP and TP? In our example, the total fry purchase is 182,857 bangus fry. Survival rate is 70%. We want to know how many fish survive after rearing. So the formula we use is percentage survival of stock is equal to percentage or total number of stock times survival rate of stock divided by the 100. First, we have to convert the percentage to decimal. So, para ma-convert siya, i-divide mo ang 70 sa 100. So, 70 becomes 0.7. Next is apply the formula. 182,857 times 0.7 is equal to 128,000 fingerlings. So after rearing, the number of fish that survive is 128,000 bangus fingerlings. This computation shows us how survival rate affects the production. It helps farmer plan better and improve fish management. That's why calculating the survival percentage is an important skill in aquaculture. Now, I will explain how to compute the survival rate of stock. This tells us what percentage of fish survive after rearing. So, before solving, let's understand why this is important. The survival rate is a key indicator in aquaculture because it shows how successful the nursery and transition stages are. A good survival rate means proper handling, feeding, and environmental management. Knowing the survival rate helps farmers evaluate their rearing practices, detect possible management problems, improve fish health and care, plan future stocking accurately. So in simple terms, it tells us how effective the culture process is. So, in this example, what is the survival rate of stock if only 128,000 have been accounted for from the original of 182,857 bangus fry purchased after having them raised in the NP and TP? In given situations, the surviving fish is 128,000 bangus fingerlings and the original purchase is 182,857 bangus fry. So we want to find the percentage and survival rate. Using the formula, survival rate of stock is equal to percentage survival of stock over principal or total number of stock times 100. First step, divide surviving fish by total fish. 128,000 bangus fingerlings divided by 182,857 bangus fry is equal to 0.7. Next, 0.7 times 100 is equal to 70%. So the survival rate of the stock is 70%. Computing survival rate help farmers measure how well their fish survive during rearing. This information is essential for improving management and ensuring the successful production. Next is the total number of fish stocks in a modular pond system with multiple compartments. So, in a modular pond system, fish are transferred from one compartment to another as they grow. Proper stocking ensures that fish are not overcrowded and have enough space throughout each growth stage. Computing the correct stock helps farmers maintain proper fish density, support healthy growth, reduce stress and competition, improve survival and production efficiency. So this calculation ensures smooth fish movement and balanced pond management. For example, in a modular pond system of 1:2:4 ratio of RPS by PPS, the total stocking density per RPS by PPS shall be based from RPS3 by PPS3, the pond with the largest compartment. If the stocking rate in the RPS3 by PPS3 having an area of 4 hectares is 3,000 fish, how many fish would be stocked in RPS1 by PPS1 with an area of 1 hectare? In a given situation, the modular pond ratio is 1:2:4. The largest compartment is RPS3 by PPS3, and the area of the RPS3 by PPS3 is equal to 4 hectares. The stocking rate is 3,000 fish per hectare. We will base all stocking number on the largest compartment. So the formula is number of stock is equal to area times stocking rate of fish per unit area in hectare. The first step is compute stock for the largest compartment. So 4 hectare times 3,000 fish is equal to 12,000 fish. So RPS3 by PPS3 will contain 12,000 fish. Even though RPS1 by PPS1 and RPS2 by PPS2 have smaller areas, they will also be stocked with 12,000 fish each. This is because the fish are still fingerlings and will be transferred between compartments as they grow. So for final stocking plan, RPS1 by PPS1 is equal to 12,000 fish. Same sa RPS2 by PPS2 is 12,000 fish, and the RPS3 by PPS3 is 12,000 fish. In a modular pond system, stocking is based on the largest compartment to maintain the consistent fish number as they grow and move. This help ensures the proper density and healthy development. Next is the stocking technique. So, these critical practices that help ensure the fish survive and grow well after stocking. Fish are sensitive to sudden environmental changes. Improper stocking can cause stress, shock, or even mortality. By following the correct stocking procedures, we help the fish adjust safely to their new environment, improving the survival growth. The first technique is to refresh the pond with tidal water a day before stocking. This step helps improve water quality by increasing the oxygen levels, removing the waste buildup and stabilizing the water conditions. Clean and fresh water creates a healthier environment for newly stocked fish. The second technique is to stock the fish during colder part of the day in the early morning or in the evening. The cooler temperature helps help reduce fish stress, prevent oxygen depletion, allow fish to adjust more comfortably. Stocking during hot periods can shock the fish and increase the mortality. The third technique is to release the fry in different areas of the pan. This ensures the even distribution of fish, reduces crowding, less competition for food in spaces, and the proper distribution helps the fish settle and grow more efficiently. Next is the acclimatization, which is very important step before stocking fish into the pan. Acclimatization helps fish gradually adjust to their new environment. Sudden changes in temperature or salinity can shock the fish, causing stress or even death. Proper acclimatization ensures reduced stress and mortality, better fish survival, smooth transition to pan conditions, which helps the fish adapt safely before release. The steps in acclimatization procedures. 1. Transfer the fry to a white basin. Upon arrival, transfer the fry into a white plastic or porcelain basin. This makes it easier to observe the fry and check their conditions. Second, remove the unwanted species. Inspect the fry and remove any unwanted organisms. This prevents the predators or competitors from entering the pond. Number 3, check the salinity and temperature. Measure the salinity and temperature of both transport water and the pond water. This tells us how big the environmental difference is. Next is gradually adjust salinity. If there is a difference, adjust slowly. The change should not exceed 5 parts per thousand per hour. Gradual adjustment prevents shock. Next is provide aeration in the counting basin. Add aeration in the basin to maintain the oxygen supply. This keeps the fry active and healthy during acclimatization. Next is count the fry. Count or estimate the fry before stocking. This ensures the accurate stocking numbers. So, if the fry are stocked directly without using a basin, allow the plastic bag to float in the pan. Wait until the water temperature stabilizes. This helps equalize temperature before release. So the acclimatization is all about protecting the fish from sudden environmental changes, which done properly, it greatly improves survival and stocking success.
Good day, I am Kendrick Maniago, the reporter for today. Now I will be discussing feeds and feeding management. Now I will be discussing aquaculture feeds or foods. Feeds are important because they affect the growth, health, and survival of aquatic animals like fish and shrimp. There are two kinds of fish foods, natural and artificial. Natural foods grow in the water such as plankton and algae. Artificial foods are feeds given by farmers to support faster growth. Artificial feeds are either single ingredient feeds. These are from plant sources like rice bran or animal sources like fish meal, or compound or formulated feeds made of 2 or more ingredients and balanced with proteins, vitamins, and minerals. Commercial pellets are examples. The artificial diets are also classified as purified diets made of pure nutrients and used mainly for research. The practical diets commonly used in fish farming because they are economical and balanced. Feeds also come in different forms, such as pellets, which can be floating or sinking. The first is sinking pellets. These are best for bottom feeders like catfish and shrimp. They sink to the bottom, making them suitable for species that naturally feed there. The second is floating pellets. These are best for surface and column feeders like tilapia. Floating feeds allow farmers to observe feeding activity, reduce waste, and better manage water quality. Next is the physical condition of feeds based on moisture content. Dry feeds contain 10% or less moisture. They are easy to restore and commonly used in commercial aquaculture. Moist to semi-dry feeds contain about 30 to 40% moisture and are softer but spoil faster. Wet feeds contain 46 to 70% moisture, such as trash fish or fresh mussel meat. This spoil easily may affect water quality. Lastly, we have the types of feed according to growth stage. Pre-starter feed has the highest protein level and is given to larvae. Starter feed is for fry and fingerlings. Grower feed supports continuous growth. Finisher feed has the lowest protein and is given before harvest. There are also commercial feeds brand available in the market which provide formulated feeds for different species and growth stages. In conclusion, choosing the right pellet type, moisture level, and feed stage is important to ensure proper growth, good health, and higher production in aquaculture. Feed formulation is a process of mixing different feed ingredients, vitamins, minerals, and additives in the right proportion to provide the required nutrients and energy for aquatic animals. There are major factors in choosing feed ingredients. First is suitability. Ingredients must match the species being cultured and should have good nutrient contents, digestibility, and pellet quality. They must also be free from toxicity. Second is availability. Ingredients should be regularly available in sufficient quantities. Third is cost. We should choose ingredients that are cheaper per unit of protein. For example, assorted fish meal contains 55% protein and costs 22 pesos per kilogram. A coffee meal contains 70% protein and costs 27 pesos per kilogram. In feed formulation, we compare the cost per protein content to determine which ingredient is more economical. Comparing ingredient cost. When formulating feed, it is a common mistake to only look at the price per kilogram of the ingredient itself. To get the best value, we must calculate the cost per kilogram of protein. Let's look at two examples. First, assorted fish meal. It costs 22 pesos per kilogram and contains 55% protein. By dividing the price by the protein percentage, we find the cost is 40 pesos per kilogram of protein. Second, AQUA meal. This costs more upfront at 27 pesos per kilogram, but it has a higher protein content of 70%. When we do the math, it costs only 38.55 pesos per kilogram of proteins. The key takeaway here, the important note here is that while AQUA meal is more expensive per kilogram of ingredient, it is actually cheaper in terms of protein value. This helps us to make more economical choices for our formulations. The methods for balancing feed rations. To create a balanced ration, there are three major techniques we can use: Pearson's square technique, multiple or trial and error method, algebraic method, deep dive the Pearson's square. The most common method we use is the Pearson's square. This is a specific technique that allows us to calculate the exact quantities of ingredients needed to meet a specific required protein level for our feed formulation. The four major ways of evaluating feedstuff or feed formulation. These are physical evaluation, biological evaluation, chemical evaluation, microbiological evaluation. First is physical evaluation. There are two methods used to determine the physical characteristics of feeds. The first is macroscopic or gross observation. This means evaluating the feed using our senses. Our sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of sight, and sense of touch. This helps detect unusual odor, color, texture, spoilage. The second method is microscopic examination. This involves examining the feed under a microscope to check starch structure, bacterial or mold presence, and moisture content. These evaluations help ensure feed quality and safety. Now I will discuss biological evaluation. Biological evaluation measures the effect of the feed on the animal itself. There are two parameters used to evaluate this. First are direct parameters, the growth, survival, tissue, and skeletal changes. These directly show how the animal responds to the feed. Second are indirect parameters. Feed conversion ratio, FCR, or feed efficiency, or FE, measures how efficiently the animal converts feed into body weight. Protein efficiency ratio measures how efficiently protein is used for growth. Productive protein value, or apparent net protein utilization, measures how much of the consumed protein is retained in the body. These parameters help determine if the feed is effective and efficient. Gross energy is the total heat produced when a feed is completely burned. It is determined using a bomb calorimeter. GE represents the total energy content of the feed before digestion and absorption. It is usually expressed in kilocalories per kilogram or kcal per kilogram or feed.
So let's go ahead in the feeding strategies in aquaculture. So feeding strategies plays a crucial role in aquaculture production. It affects growth rate, survival, production cost, and overall profitability. So different systems use natural food, fertilization methods, supplemental feeds, or complete commercial feeds depending sa species and production goals. So first is the feeding with naturally grown lab, plankton, or lumot. So in this strategy, aquatic organisms rely solely on naturally occurring food in the pond such as lab, plankton, or lumot, or the filamentous algae. So its characteristics is first is wala siyang application sa fertilization. Next is low ang production cost, and lastly is it is suitable for extensive culture systems. Its advantages is first is it is very economical. Next is environmental friendly, and lastly it has minimal management requirements. So also, if it has advantages, it also has disadvantages, like it has low and inconsistent production. Growth depends on natural productivity, and lastly is the limited carrying capacity. So this method is commonly used in traditional or small-scale fish and shrimp farming. Next is feeding with naturally grown food through organic and inorganic fertilization. So in this method, fertilizations are added to stimulate the growth of natural food organisms such as plankton and lab. So there are different types of fertilizers. First is the organic fertilizers like the animal manure and compost. Next is the inorganic fertilizers, for example, the urea and phosphate fertilizers. So its purpose is to increase nutrient availability in water, enhance plankton bloom, and improve natural food supply. So it has advantages like higher productivity than unfertilized systems. It is still relatively low cost, and it improves pond carrying capacity. Its disadvantages is it requires more monitoring of water quality, risk of over-fertilization, and oxygen depletion, and lastly, a possible water quality imbalance. So this strategy is typical in semi-intensive aquaculture systems. Feeding with naturally grown food plus supplemental feeds. So this system combines natural pond productivity with additional feeds such as rice bran, pellets, or formulated feeds. So yung natural food supports basic nutrition, and supplemental feeds enhance the growth. Also, it is common in semi-intensive culture. So first, it has advantages such as fast growth rates, higher stocking density possible, and better production yield. And also, it has disadvantages like higher feeding cost. It also requires regular feeding management and risk of wastage, and water pollution. So this method balances cost and production efficiency and is widely practiced in fish and shrimp farming. Complete feeding and ad libitum feeding. So in the strategy, cultured species depend entirely on formulated commercial feeds. Ad libitum feeding means feed is provided freely, allowing animals to eat as much as they want. So its characteristics are first is it has no reliance on natural pond productivity. Next, it has high quality, nutritionally balanced feeds, and it is used in intensive systems. Its advantages are it has maximum growth potential, high production output, and precise nutritional control. While it has disadvantages such as it has the highest production cost, it requires strict water quality management and high risk if feed management is poor. So this strategy is commonly used in intensive aquaculture operations aiming for maximum production. In conclusion, feeding strategies in aquaculture range from simple natural feeding systems to fully intensive, complete feeding systems. The choice depends on available resources, production goals, species cultured, and management capability. Extensive systems rely on natural productivity while intensive systems depend heavily on formulated feeds for higher output and profitability. So let's proceed to the first practice, which is the supplemental feeding in milkfish pond culture. So supplemental feeding is the practice of providing additional feed to fish to meet their nutritional requirements for maintenance and growth when natural food such as lab or lumot is insufficient. So it supports proper growth and improves overall production in pond culture systems. Milkfish, commonly cultured in brackish water ponds, depend initially on natural food. However, as stocking density and biomass increase, natural food alone becomes inadequate, making supplemental feeding necessary. So, the timing of supplemental feeding. Supplemental feeding usually begins 1 month after stocking milkfish fingerlings when the fish biomass reaches approximately 300 to 400 kilograms per hectare. Feeding is adjusted based on the availability of natural food. So when natural food, lab or lumot is low, feed we should feed at 2 to 4% of the fish's body weight per day. Next, when the natural food is abundant, feed at reduced rate of 1.5 to 3% of the body weight per day. So this adjustment helps prevent overfeeding, reduces feed waste, and maintains good water quality. So there are different types of supplemental feeds. So supplemental feed may include, first is the formulated pellet feeds. It has commercial feeds and homemade formulated feeds. Next is the single ingredient feeds, which are the rice bran, breadcrumbs, and other natural or artificial feed materials. So the choice of feed depends on the availability, cost, and management practices. Feeding frequency and schedule. So when natural food is scarce, the feeding frequency is 3 times per day. So the feeding schedule starts at 9 to 10 a.m., 25% of daily ration at 12 to 1 p.m., 40% of the daily ration, and 4 to 5 p.m., which is 35% of the daily ration. So, more frequent feeding ensures efficient utilization and better growth when natural productivity is low. And while when the natural food is abundant, feeding frequency is 2 times per day. So, its feeding schedule is 9 to 10 a.m., one-third of their daily ration, and 3 to 4 p.m., two-thirds of the daily ration. So reduced feeding frequency helps maintain a balance between natural and supplemental food sources. So comparison with tilapia feeding, in tilapia culture, Nile tilapia is the most commonly cultured species. So 25 to 100 grams of fish, we should feed them 3 times per day. And next is more than or equal to 100 grams fish, feed 2 times per day. So this recommendation shows that feeding frequency can also depend on fish size and growth stage. So in conclusion, supplemental feeding in milkfish pond culture is essential when natural food becomes insufficient. So proper timing, correct feeding rate, suitable feed type, and appropriate feeding frequency are important for maximizing growth, minimizing feed waste, and maintaining good pond quality, water quality. So efficient supplemental feeding improves production efficiency and profitability in milkfish farming. Complete feeding in milkfish and shrimp pond culture. So complete feeding is commonly practiced in intensive pond culture systems where natural food is absent or negligible. This strategy is widely applied in the culture of milkfish and shrimp such as the black tiger shrimp or the giant tiger prawn. It also ensures that cultured species receives all essential nutrients required for optimum growth and survival. Complete feeding. So it is the provision of formulated feeds containing all necessary nutrients such as protein, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals in sufficient amounts to support fish and shrimp maintenance and growth. It is applied when natural food is absent or minimal. It is also applied when starting to 1 or 2 days after stocking, and it is continued daily until one day before harvest. So this system is typical of intensive aquaculture operations. Is the ad libitum feeding. Ad libitum feeding refers to providing feed without restriction until the fish or shrimp reach satiation or fullness. Feeding continues until they no longer consume the feed within the normal feeding period. So this method ensures maximum feed intake but requires careful monitoring to avoid feed wastage and water quality deterioration. Sliding feeding scheme versus flat feeding rate. So, in complete feeding, a sliding feeding scheme or the high to low feeding rate is recommended rather than using a constant or flat rate throughout the culture period. For example, in sliding feeding scheme, 12% to 10% to 8%, 6%, 4%, 3% of fish or shrimp biomass. So this scheme has been found ideal for a 4-month shrimp culture period. So its advantages are, so first, its advantage matches it matches feeding rate with growth stage. Next, it prevents overfeeding in later stages. It also improves feeding efficiency and reduces production cost. So in contrast, a flat rate, for example, a constant 4% or 5% throughout the culture period may lead to overfeeding or underfeeding at certain growth stages. Feeding procedure. So, proper feeding procedure is essential in aquaculture to ensure efficient feed utilization, minimize waste, and maintain good water quality. The method of feed distribution affects growth performance, survival, and overall production efficiency in species such as milkfish and shrimp. So, number one is broadcasting the feed evenly on the pond bottom. So, broadcasting involves spreading the feed uniformly across the pond, especially along shallow areas or feeding zones. Its advantages are it ensures equal access to feed, reduces competition among fish, and simple and inexpensive method. So its disadvantages are difficult to monitor feed consumption, risk of feed wastage if overfed, and uneaten feed may decompose and affect water quality. So this method is commonly used in milkfish ponds and semi-intensive systems. Next is feeding using feeding trays or feeding areas. Feeding trays are commonly used in shrimp culture to monitor feed intake. So recommended practice is 6 to 8 feeding trays per hectare. Each tray approximately 1 by 1 meter in size. It allows monitoring of feed consumption, helps adjust feeding rates, reduces feed wastage, and improves water quality management. So after a set of usually 1 to 2 hours, trays are checked to maintain if feed remains, and feeding amounts are adjusted accordingly. So this method is especially effective in intensive shrimp farming systems. So lastly, we have reached to the feeding tips in aquaculture, or what are the do's in aquaculture. So efficient feeding management is essential for maximizing growth, minimizing feed waste, and maintaining good water quality in pond culture systems. So proper feeding practices are particularly important in species such as milkfish and other cultured finfish and shrimp. So number one is feed the fish, not the pond. So feeding should be based on actual nutritional needs of the fish rather than simply adding feed to the pond. Overfeeding results in wasted feed, poor feed conversion, and water pollution. Number two, modify feeding frequency according to conditions. So feeding frequency refers to the number of times fish are fed per day. It should be adjusted based on fish size, natural food productivity, and environmental conditions. So smaller fish require more frequent feeding because they have faster metabolism and smaller stomach capacity. Number three, increase feeding frequency when necessary. So frequent feeding is recommended when fish are small, natural food is scarce, and feeds are less stable in water. So this ensures fish receives sufficient nutrients without excessive feed loss due to leaching or decomposition. Number four, adjust feeding rate based on natural food availability. So when natural food production is low, feeding rates should be increased to compensate for the nutritional deficit. Conversely, when natural food is abundant, feeding rates can be reduced to avoid waste. Number five, match feed size to the fish size. So feed particle size must correspond to the size of the fish. So small fish requires smaller feed particles, while larger fish requires larger feed pellets. So using the correct feed size improves feed intake, digestion, and growth performance. Number six, broadcast feed over a wide area. Distributing feed over a wide area allows more fish to access feed, resulting in reduced competition, less size variation, and lower feed wastage. However, observations show that milkfish may exhibit better appetite when fed in one common but wide feeding tray. So this behavior may be explained by social interactions where feeding activities stimulates other fish to feed actively. Number 7, adjust feeding during environmental stress. Environmental factors significantly affect fish appetite and metabolism. Reduce ration by 25% when temperature drops to 25 to 27 degrees Celsius. Reduce ration by 50% when temperature falls to 21 to 24 degrees Celsius. Salinity exceeds 36 ppt and dissolved oxygen is below 3 ppm. Stop feeding when DO drops below 1.5 ppm. Feeding under poor environmental conditions can stress the fish, reduce feed utilization, and lead to water quality deterioration.
So next slide is feeding computation is essential in aquaculture to determine the correct feed ratio. So nakakatulong ito para makwenta ang tamang dami ng feeds na ibibigay sa isda at hindi sobra at hindi kulang, avoid overfeeding and underfeeding, improve growth performance. So ang taming dami at schedule ng pagpapagkain ay nakatulong para mas mabilis ang pagpalaki ng isda at mas healthy. So maintain good water quality, reduce feed wastage. So kapag tama ang competition, so mas kaunti ang nasayang na feeds kaya mas tipid sa gastos. Increase production efficiency. So mas maganda ang harvest at mas profitable ang aquaculture operation. So next is basis of feeding computation. So the amount of feed to be given to fish mainly depends on the following factors. So total biomass of fish, recommendation feeding rate, and culture stage fish. So sa total biomass of fish, this is the combined weight of all fish in the pond or tank. The larger the biomass, the more feed is required. So sa the recommended feeding rate, so this refers to the percentage of the fish body weight that should be fed per day. So example, 3% of body weight daily. So sa culture state of fish, feeding requirements vary depending on the fish growth stage like fry, fingerlings, juveniles, and adults. So younger fish usually require a higher feeding rate. So next slide is basis of feeding computation. So first procedure is collect a representative sample of fish. So randomly select a number of fish from the pond or tank to represent the whole population. Second, weigh the sampled fish. So measure the total weight of the sampled fish using a weighing scale. So third is compute the average body weight. So divide the total weight of the sample by the number of fish sampled. So lastly, multiply average body weight by the estimated fish population. So under ang result ani, so this gives the total biomass of fish in the culture system. So, accurate biomass estimation is critical because overestimation can mag-lead to overfeeding. So, underestimation mag-lead to underfeeding. So, if biomass is estimated too high, more feed than necessary will be given. So, this lead to feed wastage, higher cost, and poor water quality. If biomass is estimated too low, so fish will receive insufficient feed, resulting in slow growth and reduced population. So next is computation involving feeding. So biomass estimation. Biomass is the total weight of fish in the pond or tank or cage. So it is the foundation of all feeding calculation. So next slide is computation involving feeding. So na formula. So biomass equals average body weight times number of fish. So sa biomass, sa example, 50,000 times 3 grams. So ang biomass is 100,050 grams. So ang after ani, ang 150,000 na grams i-convert to kilograms. So i-divide nimo siya sa 1,000. So na siya 150 na kilograms. So ang total biomass is 150 kilogram. So sa feeding rate is the percentage of the fish body weight given as feed per day. So feeding rate varies depending on fish size, species, water temperature, and lastly, culture conditions. So generally, smaller fish
lead to higher feeding rate. So larger fish lead to lower feeding rate. So sa higher feeding rate, so young or small fish have faster metabolism and growth, so they require a higher percentage of feed relative to their body weight. So sa larger fish naman, as fish grow bigger, their metabolism slows and growth rate decreases. So they need a lower percentage of feed based on their body weight. So sa computation, sa daily feed requirements, so ang formula, daily feed equals biomass times feeding rate. So ang convert sa feeding rate is 10%, so equals 0.10. So ganina nag di ba ta nag-solution. So ang answer sa total biomass is 150 kilogram. So 150 kilogram times 0.10, so ang daily feed is 15 kilogram. So here in the next slide is na siya gihatag diri So fine for the feeding rate used with 50,000 milkfish fingerlings having an average body weight of 3 grams and fed 50 kilograms commercial feed each day. So ang given niya, pila ang number of fish, so 50,000. Yung average body weight is 3 grams and ang feed given per day is 15 kilograms. So step 1, i-compute na to ang biomass. So ang formula sa biomass is number of fish times average body weight. So 50,000 times 3 grams equals 150,000 grams. So, i-convert na to nit sa kilograms. So, 150,000 divided by 1,000. So, natay 150 kilograms. So, step 2, diri na ang i-compute na to ang feeding rate. So, example, so, ang 15 kilograms feed, i-times na to sa 100 o sa 1,000 grams. Tapos, ang 1 kilo, i-times na to sa 100%. So, over by 50,000 times 3 grams per fish. So, ang equivalent ani, ang next is 15,000 grams per feed over 1. I-times na to siya sa, tama. I-times na to, divided by 150 grams. So, i-times na to siya sa 1,000. So, 15,000 grams feed, i-divided by 150 grams equals 0.1 feed. So, i-times sa 100%, so naatay 10% na feed. So here in next slide is how to estimate the total amount of feed needed for the entire duration of the culture. So naay formula, so total amount of feed needed equals to total number of stock, i-times nimo sa average target weight of fish at harvest in grams, tapos i-times nimo siya sa expected overall FCR. So example ani, so kung naa kay 9,000 ka fish, i-times mo siya sa 250 grams na average target weight sa fish, tapos i-times mo siya sa expected overall FCR na 1.75, so equals to 3,937,500 grams or 300,937 kilogram or 158 bags. So here's the letter D, how to determine the percentage share of the following types of feed from the total amount needed based on the rate feed type. So to find the share of each type of feed from the total amount of needed, so dapat nata i-follow ng mga steps. So first, we must know the total feed required per day. So this comes from your biomass, i-times mo sa feeding rate computation. So second, identify the feeding rate, so ang percentage of each feed type. So example, sa starter feed dere 95%, sa grower feed kay 25%, sa finisher feed so 70%. So third is i-convert na nimong percentage to decimal form. So ang formula as and next kay i-multiply na nimo ang total feed required by each decimal formula. So same ani. So percentage share of feed type equals total amount of feed needed. I-times nimo siya sa percentage rate of feed type. So example, sa 3,937 kilogram, i-times nimo siya 0.05 sa starter feed. So equals 196.85 or 108.97 kilogram. Kung sa grower feed naman, so ang katong ano mo diri total amount sa feed needed nimo is i-times nimo siya sa 0.25 sa grower feed, so na kay 984.5 or 984 kilogram. So sa finisher feed naman sa i-times nimo ang 309 3,937 kilogram times 0.70, tapos i-divide mo siya sa 100%, so nakay 2,755.9 or 2,756 kilogram. So here in the next slide, sa letter E, how to determine apparent feed conversion ratio, ang FCFR or S value or single value. So ang formula ana is ang AFCR equals to total feed given divided by final weight minus initial weight of fish stock. So example sa problem in finding for FCR or S value, what would be apparent food conversion ratio if at the end of a 120-day culture period, the fish stock that had consumed 1,500 kilogram of feed had grown to a total weight of 1,015 kilogram from an initial of 15 kilogram. So ang total feed given is 1,500 kilogram. So, i-divide mo siya sa 1,015 kilogram minus sa 15 kilogram. So, ang answer is 1.5 or 1.5 ratio over 1. So, what's the purpose of this? So, to measure efficiency of feeding programs, to guide adjustment of feeding and management, and to help evaluate economic performance. Here in the next slide is about consequences of improper feeding computation. So, naay overfeeding and underfeeding. So, under sa overfeeding is feed wastage. So, mo ni ang mga unnecessary loss of feed. So, next is deterioration of water quality. So, pollution and low oxygen. So, increased production cost. So, kani more money spent on feed, higher risk of disease. So, magka-cause siya og stress and unhealthy fish. So, underfeeding kay slow growth. So, fish take longer to reach market size. So, size variation. So, ang uneven fish growth siya in the pond. So, poor fish condition. So, among fish kay weak and unhealthy. And lastly, extended culture period. So, delayed ang harvest and ang lower ang efficiency. So, sa stock sampling practices and techniques, so unsay purpose sa sampling? So, sampling is representative sampling should be undertaken for the following reason. First is to monitor fish growth. Second, to have basis in adjusting the feed ration. Third is to check the health condition of the fish. And lastly, to check the occurrence of disease. Stock sampling practices and techniques. So, time and frequency of sampling and number of samples. So, sampling should be done every month and not at shorter periods to avoid stress or hurting the fish. So, sa time and frequency of sampling should be done once a month rather than more frequently. Sampling too often can cause stress or injury to the fish, which may affect their growth and health. So, the minimum ideal sampling size is 10% of the stock, but this could be reduced to a smaller percentage rate if only free them from stress. So ideally, the sample should be at least 10% of the total stock to get an accurate representation of the population. However, if fish stress is a concern, the sample size can be reduced to a smaller percentage to minimize handling the stress. So in short, monthly sampling of an appropriate number of fish balances accurate measurement with fish welfare, ensuring proper growth monitoring without harming the fish. So, sa methods of sampling, natay purpose of sampling. So, stock sampling is done to first estimate average body weight, determine biomass, adjust feeding rate, and monitor fish health and growth. So, why stopify fish? So, fish are temporarily sedated to reduce stress, prevent injury, allow accurate weighing, and make handling easier. So, na recommended chemical. So, option 1 is phenoxyethanol. So, use 10 to 15 ppm. Option 2 is chemical mixture. So, ang components niya is 10 ml of isopropyl alcohol, 10 ml of quinidine sulfate, and 5 ml concentrated sulfuric acid. So, application rate of mixture. So, use 10 to 15 ppm of the mixture. So, equivalent to 1 drop per 4.5 to 6.5 liters of water. So, mass or bulk weighing technique. So, bulk weighing means weighing a group of fish together instead of individually. So, this method is faster, practical for large stocks, and common in aquaculture. So na example, so bulk weight of 50 fish is equals to 330 grams. So therefore, the average weight is 330 grams divided by 50 fish, so equals to 6.6 gram per fish. So if the total number of tack is equivalent to 50,000 fish and on sampling day no mortality is considered or recorded, then the present total weight of stock at the time of sampling is equal to 300,030 grams or 330 kilograms or 50,000 fish times 6.6 gram per fish, so equals to 330,000 grams. So below are the formulae used to estimate the prawn biomass in pounds. So area of cast net, so as you see here, reduce over the pi, reduce to the power of 2. So 3.1416 ang kwan sa pi. So i-times mo siya sa radius of cast net to the power of 2. So total weight, so total in kilogram or gram or divided by area of cast net, so times of total pond area. So in the next slide is about growth and condition factor of fish. So what is growth? So growth is the increase in size and or number of cell or tissue in living organisms. So growth is the increase in body size of fish measured in terms of body length, so ang haba ng katawan ng isda; body depth, so ang kapal o taas ng katawan ng isda; body weight or ang bigat ng isda. Ways to express fish growth. So may tulo, absolute growth, absolute growth rate, so muna ang daily weight gain, and relative growth rate, so percentage per day. So first, we tackle about sa absolute growth. So, absolute growth is a simple increase in body weight over a given period. It shows how many grams the fish gain. So, the formula of absolute growth is final weight minus to initial weight. So, example, ang initial weight is 10 grams and ang final weight is 120 grams. So, absolute growth is financial weight 120 minus to initial weight na 10 grams, so equals 110 grams. So, absolute growth rate naman sa grams per day. So, absolute growth rate expresses how fast the fish gains weight per day. So, this is more informative than absolute growth because it includes time. So, ang formula niya is final weight minus to initial weight. So, ay minus mo sa, T2 minus T1. So, mo ni ang T2 to minus T1, mo ni siya ang culture period days nimo sa fish. So, the example is, so nakay 120 na final weight and minus mo sa 10 grams na initial weight, i-divided by 90 days sa imong culture period. So, nakay 1.222 gram per day. So, typical value, so juvenile milkfish is 3 to 5 kilogram per day. So, new strains of Nile tilapia, 1.53 grams per day. So why RGR is important? So it standardized growth and comparison, so accounts for initial size, useful in research trials, and lastly compares treatment fairly. So unsa ang relative growth rate? So relative growth rate expresses the percentage increase in weight per day relative to the initial weight. So given, so sa initial weight is 10 grams and ang final weight is 120 grams. So ang time is 90 days. So ang example ani is 120 minus 10 divided by 10 grams times 90 days. So 10 grams times 90 days, so 900. So 100. So 120 minus 10 is 100. So 100 times 110 times 100 divided by 900 equals 0.1222 times 1,000. So equals 12.22% per day. So sa next slide is specific growth rate or SGR or instantaneous growth rate. So specific growth rate or expresses the percentage increase in fish body weight per day using natural logarithm. So it is widely used because fish growth is exponential, not linear. So ang formula niya is natural logarithm. So final weight minus natural logarithm initial weight times 100 divided by culture period day. So here is the example of the FGR. So after nimo compute, so ang answer is 2.76% per day. In the next slide is about condition factor. So what is condition factor? So condition factor is a measurement of the relative plumpness or well-being of fish based on the relationship between its weight and length. So a fish that is heavier for its length is considered plumper and has a higher K value. So a thinner fish has a lower K value. So it is commonly used in aquaculture to evaluate first, nutritional status, second, health condition, third, growth performance, and lastly, suitability of feeding program. So, na ay formula. So, ang formula sa condition factor is weight divided by length. So, example, ang weight nimo is 96.92 grams. So, i-divide mo siya sa 17.75 to the power of 3 in centimeters. So, i-times mo siya sa 100. So, nakay 1.73. So, same lang po na siya sa example 2. So, important notes, do not compare different species. So, condition factor values cannot be compared between fish species with different body shapes. So, because body form affects K. So, literally compressed, deep body fish lead to natural higher K. So, kung long, slender fish, so mag-lead siya naturally lower K or naturally lower condition factor. So for the last slide, what condition factor indicates? So duha kaning high K value and low K value. So sa high K value, fish is plump, good nutritional status, prefer feeding, and good culture condition. While sa low K value, fish is thin, possible underfeeding, stress or disease, or poor environment. So, a high K value shows healthy, well-fed fish in the good condition, while ang low K value signals problem in feeding, health or environment. So, that's all. So, thank you for listening.